earlier this week, it was announced that Malik Beasley, the former Detroit Piston, is no longer the target of a sports gambling investigation. This was big news earlier on in NBA free agency because he was one of the main top targets in this free agency. Now, it was reported that basically on the table for him, and it was expected that he was going to resign with the Pistons for 3 years, $42 million. But when this investigation came out that he was a part of, that he was a target of, obviously that deal did not go through. The Pistons end up signing Duncan Robinson for probably really to kind of replace his production. But now guess what? Malik Beasley, according to the news, is no longer a part of this investigation. It really means that he's the top free agent left in the market, and he's a guy that is going to be really, really good pickup for anyone. I would love for the Pistons to possibly try to bring him back. Now, I know with the deal and everything that can make it a little bit interesting. I know there's other teams that can offer him a little bit more, but he was one of the best, if not the best, six men last year for the whole entire NBA. Like when he was on and hitting his shots, Malik Beasley was absolutely dominant when he was on the court. Obviously, the playoffs didn't necessarily go the way he wanted to. He wasn't hitting a ton of his shots. A lot of that kind of had to do with the Pistons just not playing overall, at least not shooting the ball very well overall. But this is really interesting now to see exactly what happens to Malik Beasley. I really do hope that the Pistons do reach out to him. It was also reported about 20 minutes ago that there's a couple of teams that actually showed interest in him. One of those teams is the New York Knicks. I believe the Cavs is one of those teams as well. But this is going to be a real interesting free agency for him. I could very much see him signing a pretty similar deal to what he did to Detroit last year, maybe a 1 year kind of prove it deal. Now, obviously, he did prove it this past year with the Pistons. If he wants to sign with the Pistons again for a 1 year or 2 year deal, I would absolutely be willing to do that. If he wants to do 3 years, I think one of the really strengths of this team then would be the shooting. Now, you might have to talk about a little bit about like the contracts they handed out, if they can really pay for it. But at that point, I think the Pistons have enough shooters on this team. But adding another shooter in Malik Beasley wouldn't necessarily hurt. But it's really interesting of how that was a big storyline in free agency, was Malik Beasley, was this sports investigation, and rightfully so. But it really seemed like Malik was never really freaking out too much about it. I think he kind of knew, obviously, there wasn't a ton going on there. Now, there's been other stories about him overall that aren't necessarily the greatest. But with that being said, I'm really happy for him that he was basically no longer the target of this investigation. Hopefully, Malik Beasley can kind of get the money, in my opinion, he deserves, because he was great in Detroit. And as a Detroit Pistons fan, I would love to see him back. I think he would be able to really help this team. I think this team, with a Malik Beasley back, with the Duncan Robinson, with kind of the other pieces that they added, I think that it actually got better. And if you don't have Malik Beasley, do I think they necessarily got better? Maybe marginally because of a couple of the other pieces that they added. Do I think Duncan Robinson is as good as Malik Beasley? Probably not, especially for what they did last year. But obviously, the Michigan connection, it totally makes sense. But going to be an interesting kind of couple of weeks, at least up to kind of the NBA season, because what's going to happen to Malik Beasley? What's going to happen to the Pistons? Are the Pistons going to end up being interested? You absolutely knew they were interested. You absolutely knew that they wanted to re-sign him. But because of all the other moves, it's going to be an interesting situation. But would absolutely love to have Malik Beasley back in Detroit. I think he would be really helpful for this team. You can never have enough shooting, in my opinion, especially in the NBA. We've seen a lot of teams win with a lot of shooting. And one of the major concerns with the Pistons, at least the past couple years, I think they were absolutely better last year because of Malik Beasley, was its shooting, was surrounding Cade Cunningham with shooting. And if you have a Malik Beasley, if you have a Duncan Robinson, if you have these guys around him that are really great NBA shooters, that's really going to help this offense just continue to take off. You're going to see Cade continue to get better. I think overall this Pistons team will be really, really good next year. But I think with the Malik Beasley, maybe there's more of an expectation to go further in the playoffs. I still think that this Pistons team should absolutely make the playoffs. I think they should probably win at least one series in the playoffs. The East is pretty open right now, and because of that, I think the Pistons should absolutely be willing to make a move for Malik Beasley, because now that you have Jaden Ivey back, there's just so much depth and so much shooting on this team with the Cade Cunningham, with the Jaden Ivey. If they do sign Malik, you have, again, Duncan Robinson. Like, there's just so much there that I think it would really make a lot of fans really excited for this team. And there's obviously excitement for this team overall, but I think Malik was a very well-known fan favorite, and I don't think it would really hurt for the Pistons to bring him back for another year or another 2 years or maybe 3 years. I don't think they would offer the 3 years, $42 million at this point. I wouldn't hate, again, like I said earlier, offering a 1 year kind of prove it deal. If they do that and he does another great year, I think you give him that 3 years, 42, and maybe 3 years a little bit more than that, because he's absolutely deserved that at this point. But obviously the investigation affected a lot of things. Hopefully he gets his opportunity. Hopefully it's in Detroit, but now it seems like he's pretty clear regarding that investigation. So yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed this little segment about Malik Beasley. Obviously, with football coming up, there's going to be a lot more football talk than this, but hopefully you enjoyed this segment. Definitely we'll talk more Pistons when the time comes, when the NBA season comes around. But yeah, thank you for tuning into this segment. Please continue to tune into these segments on YouTube. You also have the podcast on Spotify and Apple, also on YouTube as well. So please continue to share these. Let your friends and family know if you enjoyed this. Definitely more conversations coming up in the near future.